Hello, this is Chrystal Meach with Tao of the Heart YouTube channel, and today I have Tobie back. Thank you so much.
Hello. It's so great to be here, Chrystal. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just finished up Tobie's Spring Deep, and so that's what I wanted to talk to her about today. So, could you maybe explain to the audience what the Spring Deep was about to get us started?
Yeah. Oh, it'd be an honor. And thank you again for walking through the experience. Spring Deep is an iteration that came from conversation about how we update in this really interesting, potent moment in which we are both living and dying, and wondering how to situate ourselves in some of the really important questions about belonging and community and empowerment. And when I say this is a potent time, Chrystal, what I mean is like we can literally burn the trash. We can be clear consciously about what stories we desire to keep and what stories we desire to heal, what stories we desire to weave into new stories. There's a tremendous opportunity to, what I like to say is till, and in that we're tilling the deep. And so deep has a function of, I would say, two or three very core elements. It's primarily formed through and with this idea of sovereignty and authority, in that we all have our own timing cycles. And for many of us, our Earth School family of origin training has led us to places where we might not necessarily be in what we feel is our own divine right timing. And everyone has their own experience of individuation or coming to their own sense of the person within the tribe. And right now, the new ecology of the earth is inviting us to come online to the extent that we're conscious of that experience. And I like to say there's no one way for everyone to do anything. And that's also what Deep is about, is inviting people to return to one's own um, bigness of their own mythology, and to get comfortable in the void of that space of its vastness. A lot of what our culture invites us to do is to go, 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 go. And in many ways, and I'm speaking very much about, let's just say, and we vary vastly in the United States, but like we'll just say in the United States perspective on things, where it's about doing, human doingness. And this moment invites us to becomingness. And man, much in the same way that across the country, we have like shows like Storage Wars, because people are paying to hoard physical items or reasonably store. I'm not going to judge. Everyone's got their own craft. In our household, a long time ago, we decided that we could never rightly ascertain what anyone was doing with anything that they were using in their space or the public space. So it became craft. Everyone's got their own craft. Though much in the same way that we pay for storage of items perhaps well beyond their usefulness to us, we're also holding a lot within our etheric energy field. And this is a dynamic field of creation where our dreams can lead to instantaneous manifestation. And so Deep is an opportunity for people to remember their inherent mastery as powerhouses, and through that very gently be guided to come into this huge place of permission and grace around not knowing what it looks like, around you being whatever age you are when you're coming to this place of the new ecology of the body in relationship to the great mystery in the earth, in whatever format that looks for you. Though there's a few things that can be said. We're all humans, okay? There are others amongst us. We don't have to talk about that necessarily in this context. Though even there are others, we could say there is a oneness, right? And right now, in order for us to get to a place where we can play and prepare for our collective telepathy, is to be really clear about how we are located in our own awareness, and to work in a different way with our crystalline energy systems. And I said, well, what's that, Tobie? I like to think of the body as a living battery, or a piezoelectric battery that works through solutions with salts that conduct current. And as living plant battery crystals, we have this body identity that has a lot of potential to it. For many of our own lives, we've not been raised in an awareness of what capacities our bodies have for self-healing and for preservation and for knowing the truth of what is so that right action can be determined, both in one's own life and within one's group, however that's defined. And I think we're really doing a lot of tilling around what it means to be in a group right now. So we're being invited to locate ourselves, we could say, within ourselves. And for many of us, that's a totally new thing.
Yeah, totally. I just want to say, like, I didn't know what to expect coming into Spring Deep. And then, like, I got into it. Like, before I started it, I had my own meditation practice, but I've never had, like, what did you call yourself? A DJ?
Oh,
A
yeah,
meditation
metaphysical DJ.
DJ?
Yeah. Multidimensional DJ. Right. Let's mix it
Yeah.
up.
So that was really interesting to be in that container of meditation. I've never done it that way before. So it really brought things up that where, like normally, my brain would be like in this flow state, and then all of a sudden you'd bring me back to, something. It might be the rose or, whatever we're calling in those each of those days that we did the meditation. And so that kind of like led me to a different spot and a different awareness. And sometimes for me, my experience was that sometimes I would just black out, and then I would wake up like 2 hours later, like, what just happened?
What do you make of that, beloved sister in alchemy? Do tell.
Well, I think it's almost like a download that you aren't even conscious of. But then you go through your day and you're like, "Oh, well, this is different." So it's almost like you've changed coming out of this meditation. You can't quite put your finger on exactly what happened, but there has been a clearing of some sort. And, as you keep going through, I mean, that was my experience. As I kept going every day, things started to come up. Like little things started to come up, like, I noticed this, and what have I attached the meaning to this? For me, it was like anxious attachment. And so that was my way of control in the world. So being aware of that. So that's kind of what this container brought me to. And now I'm aware of it, and I can just instantly, it's gone because I'm immediately aware of it. And it's like, I don't need to be in control because I'm secure right now. So it's very interesting. Like I lived my life before Spring Deep where I'm like anxiously trying to get through life or control. Whereas now it's like, I'm safe. Why do I need to control? And I have goosebumps right now.
Let's calibrate to that affirmation, right? Because you beautifully described uncoupling your nervous system from things that you didn't necessarily need to bring front of mind, though you probably could if you wanted to sit down and talk about things. And a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just reflecting what you said, just cleared like poof. And not like poof in the sense that nothing was done, but that you showed up in a way that was open and allowing. And then all of a sudden, et voila, it's gone. And to me, that one, you have a dedicated practice where you show up every day in your own way. And you already give yourself permission. The stretching of giving oneself permission to release that which no longer resonates happens at a cadence and a tempo that, speaking very broadly, many few of us are invited to find in our daily flow outside of whatever we create as sleep. And I'll use that loosely in quotes because for some of us, for various reasons, it's anything but an opportunity to refresh the physical body and allow the mind to experience peace and literally to lift your reference points up and off the day, the experience of being a body moving through space. all the things that happened in the day, all the things that didn't, and just go, and we're done here. It's a whole practice in itself.
Yeah,
I think
keep
I'll
going.
just stop there. No, I was just saying, well, so you can't describe that to people. One, because everyone has a different experience with it, right? I think that's not part of it. For me, autonomy and sovereignty have always been the cornerstones of my practice, because if I'm not leading people back to themselves, I feel like I'm doing a disservice in the world, and nothing that I do as a person who is offering service to others matters if it's not leading people to remember their own inherent authority. For energy shifts to occur, they have to occur in our own right timing. We can't be pried into spaces, and we can't also catapult ourselves there with the power of our mind, And right now, there's a lot of things that we're being invited to pay attention to in what we could call the media machine, however one defines it, even if one operates in a modulation that they feel is more comfortable and respectful of their nervous system's capacity to process information and so forth. Literally letting go of everything as a thing and bringing all that awareness into one's own, we could just say, divine line. I respect everyone's going to feel what they want to feel about how they're connected to all that is. And I'm not necessarily going to put that in a place for other person. However, in session, as I've shared with you before, only like recognizing source in the earth. And because we walk around vertically, I say source is up, blue is up and brown is down. Though importantly in my practice, it's about finding what other people's languages are. And so to me, holding really juicy, buoyant, pure spaces for the sacredness that we are to be accessed in whatever capacity a person would like to do that is what I'm all about. Perhaps forever, but certainly the last 5 years have been about the time is now to remember our inherent capacity, to create. And when we carry, this is what you released was in the space that you use to try on new ideas. And it can be totally full. Like, think about what happens if we don't clean the filter on our dryers, right? They catch on fire. And so there's a huge potential right now, like to use just the cosmic winds and the winds of our earth awakening in its own new cycle that we can serve. And when we hang 10 in the barrel, amazing things happen. The ocean is also vast and potentially very dangerous and it can kill us, So this is really about moving beyond our comfort zones into spaces that we might have only vaguely imagined and, the furthest reaches from our conscious awareness on a daily. So if we stop dreaming, we stop assembling into form. It's our breath and our ability to conceptualize. And right now, we're being invited to bring that focus home and use it to remember how to dream. And then to dream collectively. What do we want our neighborhoods, our communities, our world, and much of what we're experiencing right now is the conversation around what do we desire? And is it enough just to have governance by proxy? And what does that mean in terms of what we're complicit with and what we're not complicit with and how we organize ourselves in our day-to-day?
Yeah, there's like so much in that. Like what you just said, it's like I can't even unpack all that.
Well, we can start in whatever is top of mind, So to me, deep is very much about how do you get into a place where you remember that it's our dreaming. Like, so my thing, Chrystal, is that dreaming is a civic practice, or I say praxis. Like, well, people say, well, I think that's really straightforward, and they're like, well, what does that mean, dreaming? And in many ways, if we can't imagine what types of places we want to live and play and work and gather, what else are we doing in our embodiment experience, And I understand we live in a particular context in the United States where there was an explicit agenda to create the United States as a nation of consumers in the 90s and a shift into the 50s. And I'm not going to say that wasn't, an experience that didn't have a lot of utility and horror associated with it. At the same time, it's not just, we are the currency, and so we're being asked as we move toward an attention economy to become really clear about how we direct the currency that is our focus and our awareness and our attention. And we could say that we've all grown up in a world largely where it was about organizing by placing it outside the self, and we're being invited to say, okay, that was great, let's come home, because what's outside might be a pillar that's collapsing. in terms of we can't assume that everyone has, the same idea of the greater good in their awareness. And while some people think that's horrible, in many ways it's like, well, why not just talk about what our agreements are about the greater good, And so for me, in many ways, deep is a key into a world where we remember that it might not be, we don't necessarily all have the same calling in how we show up in our lives. I'm not necessarily going to say here people need to get out, they need to be in the streets, they need to be like doing, citizens action. And that may not be your way of contributing to your lived experience of dreaming. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying about that either, but we're doing the thing here. And we're being invited to shift from the sense of it being done to us.
Yeah. And again, when there's our conversation here and then there's outside in the matrix, like when you go back to work, people can't even comprehend money, them being currency versus them going to work and working for currency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like a container that you're providing to really see that people can take back their power.
Yeah.
Or they can see that how they use their power.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful.
Because all the power that ever was or will be is here now. So how do you want to use it? Do you want to disempower yourself? Because you're still exerting your power. So you're saying there's power by being disempowered.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And to be fair, that's the way we grew up. I mean, I'm 55. I was born in 1970. And I would say the rules were, one, appear as an integrated self, or you would be declared mad and denied a voice. That became apparent very quickly. The other one was, I'm sure. Remind me of the last thing that you just said.
The disempowerment, like the choice that we every moment.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Power.
In order to push, we had to pull. In order to go up, we had to go down. In terms of how we organized a lot of our day-to-day reality, I would say, and I don't know how to describe this other than to say there was this energetic inversion. And so as a very creative person, I had to push to black to get white. I had no idea why. I was able to, and I'm shorthanding how I use my energy in process. I feel like we all have unique sensory perception mechanisms. We all understand our own power mechanics. Like, for example, we're talking about passive aggression, but in a way we could say, in a meta sense, it's a power dynamic and how we express power. Anyway, and that shifted. And so when I say there's a new ecology of the body, one of the things that I'm alluding to is that we can no longer speak the inversion of what we really desire and expect to, in any way, shape, or form, connect with it. In fact, we'll get that which we are pushing against. So we could also say there's a leitmotif within our culture, or a thematic of how one develops and grows that is based against, a mechanic that's moved through pushing against something and digging in and using that as a launch pad to do something different. And so this use of inversion to create has outlived its ability to serve us on the one hand, right? And so when you talk about people outside of this experience or outside of the container, where people coming from all different experiences, though, are willing to imagine, oh, maybe I am, so they've stepped into that world of possibility. But the sense of what we're talking about in deep and what we've experienced in deep is what's rippling through all human consciousness right now in terms of this new ecology, where it's no longer sufficient, or things, I don't know, maybe people talk about in terms of density, like it was heavier here. And so you could set up a situation where you were like, and then, relocate somewhere, like it just, and this is why we're seeing people exposed, because think about it this way. Like if you took a time release, open shutter photograph and you had someone stand in one position and then locate in another position, right? And you looked at the sequence of stills and then you looked at maybe a video, you would see a shadow of that trace. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So it's not so much that why are people like this today? it may be the case that we're never meant to agree in the way that people suggest warrants being in conflict about, okay? But it's allowing ourselves to become habituated to a new way of showing up where the weight of legacy, energetic patterns, the weight, and I use that in quotes because it doesn't weigh anything, but essentially what it does is it clogs the higher frequency expressions of the body's ability as a piezoelectric battery to conduct current. Okay, and so we could say deep is like prep for powering up the exquisiteness of the piezoelectricity of the body deva, and to be able to utilize it in a way so that you don't have to live in fear anymore because you have the capacity literally to conduct current, to move charge, to pivot in a way that ultimately may make you invisible in a technological system of surveillance with cameras everywhere because you could be slightly out of phase from the machine cycles and thereby not be detectable to them because you can hold deep still. We'll see. The empirics are coming in. I'll share them as we become more in touch with how we're able to transform our capacities and our lived experience.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like when you said that, I thought of like light language. Like when you put light language in AI and AI just doesn't know what to do with it. And I just love that. Like just can't translate.
Well, no, it can't. Here's the thing. It's not, AI is not going anywhere. There are people who will choose to live without AI. And it's not about its presence or absence. I think it's more about like we're at the beginning of the story. We're like a zygote, like we have this zygote that we have this capacity as Courtney Hunt, who is a OBGYN that encourages people to access the sunlight to enhance their mitochondrial functioning. We have this capacity to raise our AI baby in a way that is in alignment with the human experience of vibrancy and thriving. And getting back to your comment about the inversion, meaning people saying negative things as a way of kiboshing their own ability to like express themselves, that's a part of it. That opening up, that like falling, getting out of the entrainment of the lock and just being able to go like, oh, wow, I have other options. I can choose how I show up. Going back to what you said that you took away from your experience in the community of that space, it's like, nanoseconds initially. And then the more we practice, it becomes longer. And if we find ourselves in a dynamic script experience where we're doing the thing, we are like, oh, come on back in line. It's even do you find yourself get to a place of gentleness if you were, rather than feeling like you had to be in one particular state all the time? Do you feel like you can flow with your variability in terms of different contexts and people and places and things and how your energy flows and how you choose to show up?
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that I'm there yet, but it's getting better.
But that's the thing, you are already there. Well, more like do you weave in quickly? Yeah. Is that the part that you're saying that isn't there yet? Like, it's not that it's the same every time, Chrystal. It's more like, is your return home softer? Are you just like, oh, yeah, come on?
Yeah, definitely. Like you're definitely I think once you grasp the feeling of the state, then you want to go there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're finding ways to get to that all the time. And then you get to a situation that's hard. And then it's like the challenge is, oh, well, what is my choice? And that's where the freedom is, right?
Yeah.
What we're getting to.
How we show up for every thin slice of this fabulous sandwich or cake that is our lives. Would you say that your experience in Deep has had any impact on your home life with your family?
Yes. I mean, I'm definitely calmer. I think I'm more present, just like in the moment, like, with my daughter. And I think like, I feel like I'm a way shower. Like I'm doing it first, but they're kind of like, what in the heck? Like, why is she so happy? Like, what's going on? So that,
Yeah. Well,
so
let's talk about that. What does it feel like? So you shared with me that you have been asked, why are you happy every day? Is it feels you like what it feels like in your body? Your approach is shifted? Is it a je ne sais quoi? You can't quite put and you could say, I don't want to break it apart, Tobie, because that's violence. And I'm not necessarily going to insist you do that if that's the case. But is there a particular, I mean, is it just like it just bubbles up when you get into the community and you're like, can we talk a little bit about that? I'd love to hear what your experience is.
well, now that they let me know, it's great to have that reflection back, first of all. And then second of all, like, it was so hard to get to that point. Like, and I think we can all speak to that. And so it's just like such a reward to have that moment.
Aww.
And then to not have to answer, like,
Yeah. To have that moment too, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it just makes me want to work harder to get to that point where, it's like things vanish in a second. Like before it was like, why is this happening? Whereas, you go to spring deep and you're working in the void and you're just letting it go and it
Yeah.
doesn't have control over you anymore. So that's the reward.
Yeah.
The man behind the curtain isn't running the show anymore.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's about showing up. It wasn't in the meditations for people listening are about 35 minutes long so that you can in the container or the space of the people participating in deep, as we call it, is set up so that you don't have to listen to the daily. You can receive it because you're in the group and give yourself license to show up in whatever way feels right for you. So that's why it's a 21-day container of 21 live transmissions, and then open another 21 days for people who experienced shift and wanted to go back in and have a space to integrate with other people with whom they've walked in the void. And for some people, that additional 21 days may be reminding themselves they really don't have to listen to a damn thing, and it's just fine because that's how they're showing up, and to trust that they're receiving through the crystalline grid system, because we work with our own body's crystalline grid system, again, is a piezoelectric battery, right? And the crystalline grid system of the earth, which is massive by comparison to us and has tremendous capacity to assist us in the heavy lifting of unlocking ourselves from every other time, every other place, just being able to come to this moment without, and I say unlocking, we lock when there's an incredible, usually traumatic imprint. It can be an incredibly joyful imprint. We could say it registers very high frequency. And to the end of frequency, I love what you said about working to be in that space where I'm glad that I got here. And I'm going to just very gently reflect to you, Chrystal, that you've always been there. You're already, and I know you know this, and it's very trite to say it, but when you get to a place, or shall I say, and when you get to a place where you've been willing to show up with yourself in stillness. And it can be for 2 minutes. It can be for 35 minutes. It can be for 3 hours. It doesn't have to be, because we're in a very accelerated moment as the earth transforms and as the new ecology of our body transforms. Where that stillness has the effect of offering witness to these very high sensation imprints, and so that they can be released and untied. And the aspects of the self, which is never fragmented. We could say there's various language, like it becomes shattered or it's never severed. The level of integration of the parts is a personal process and journey, and there's no end game that I'm going to prescribe with regards to that particular experience. Though the simple act of offering witness through stillness, and it can consciously be with something that we know we're walking alongside as a deep pattern or as a family pattern or as an epigenetic pattern that's manifesting in our body. That witness, because we're so powerful when we do become still, because the baseline of the earth has shifted into our body's ability to transform, we could say, distorted geometries and how the energy flows within the body. And I want to sidebar very quickly and say everyone's doing something different here. So again, there is not an end result of being completely healed or completely able in an idealized sense. Everyone is writing their own experience of what assembly in the body looks like. So I don't want to suggest that there's this place we're all going. Stuff moves in that witness because we have this our eyes or our awareness or our focus, particularly when we bring the heart of the mind in concert with the mind of the heart, and we connect that with our desire and we become lit up. Our capacity to, just by looking, just by pivoting and putting the hot rays of our sun on the opportunity to be still and naked within ourselves, where forgiveness is the root of this. Everything we've said and left unsaid, done and left undone. Because often, too, we might have these tags or locks in our own life or multidimensionally or however you organize space-time, or certainly within legacies of families, where we're like, oh, I can't believe I'm blah, 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 blah. And so we put like another lock on top of a lock that already happened. And so for many of us, this like unlocking is like, I don't have to feel bad about feeling bad, you know? And again, I know part of being in the body is having could be having an exquisitely sorrowful experience. Do you. And at the same time, consciously do you, right? And so now what may have been in terms of your piezoelectric capacity, right? Your high end is now the baseline, okay, of your usual range, we'll say. And so what maybe was joy at another time, certainly catalyzed by your experience with this community, but definitely through your devotion to your path, has now become the lowest end of your just baseline frequency range on a daily basis. And so this like, why are you so happy? Because I think we can become locked in traps. People are like, I'm supposed to be happy, Tobie, right? And I'm like, no, be neutral. So if something comes in and you ride that wave of happiness, you have the ability to just like experience the fullest expression of that happiness wave. And then you can rest back in neutral. Where we think we're supposed to be happy or joy or whatever, we tend to micromanage and try to like get the world to do the things so we can, you know, and that's not what this is about at all. And that may be how many of us experience family, you know, in many ways. It's like, you know, just really like get in alignment with the thing and an override of that, like, well, you know, so honestly, a lot of my client base are people who have huge energy. And that's part of what the invitation right now is to bring that huge energy back to this moment through radical witness of the self. And then be able to use it to literally till and rewrite the consensual locks in the public space that we're co-dreaming with each other right now. Like living, walking fire code writers are the people who I would say are primarily served by the work that I do, because it's never about me. It's like when you come home, you're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I could fuel worlds with my capacity. And and we're being asked to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, well, I like to have fun. I feel very dramatic about all the things tonight, and I appreciate your willful playfulness with me about it. But we're talking about things, and I think that are really big things that maybe we don't have words for, right? And so I think, yeah, and the lexicon can be tricky because this whole, you know, again, bringing us back to people with whom you or I might work in just the space. Everybody's different, and so it's easy in the circles that I've run adjacent to, and I wouldn't call myself New Age or a hippie or anything like that. I'm more of a metaphysical electrician than anything else. Eclectic engineer. Some people say, you know, I can see the lines and the energy and the geometries, but it's just there's an invitation for us to explore in new ways. And much of what we're being told is about being afraid right now, and we also can't rightly imagine that we're going to go to the truth store and get the truth about the things, you know. And so our own discernment is very sacred, and our body is just a beautiful tool in helping us stay present with the truth of what is the next steps, particularly when there's a lot of henny penny vibe going on. You're like, is this it? And you're like, oh, no, it's not. And without that capacity to discern, you know, and there's layers, and it happens in the process. Yeah.
And it just It's layer after layer.
Yeah.
Like it just keeps evolving.
So how are you finding yourself being grounded enough during the days? Are you finding yourself having more access to your gifts? I mean, obviously shifting your baseline will make some things more available to you. How's that been?
For me, it's a way of like being conscious. Like being conscious of
Hmm.
my life. Like I was talking about the man behind the curtain before. So like,
Yeah.
it was like, why do I have this attachment? What is it really about? And like I would go and
Hmm.
I would get certain points with a therapist, but I found that like in Spring Deep with the meditation practice, it was much easier to get to that point of, hey, this is me trying to love myself. And these are all the ways I was trying to find the power to love myself. But then it came back to love was always there. Like I didn't have to go out and get it. I wasn't, we talked about a little bit, like we think that we're fragmented or
I'm going to
disconnected.
invite you to pause on the fragmented because I'd really like to come back to that. And what I thought wouldn't happen has, and I need to grab my battery. I don't want to do it during yeah, exactly what you're saying. Thank you.
Pun intended.
Technical interference, please. Yeah, exactly, right? Hey, how about that? Why? What you put attention to happen. Always the invitation to begin again, every breath, an opportunity. And honestly, it is the sense of humor, girlfriend. Thank you. And you were talking about the experience of fragmentation or becoming fragmented.
Yes. So the feeling like, and for me, the meditation, because in meditation, you're like connecting back to yourself. Then you realize when you come out of that, hey, I was connected here, but I don't feel connected over here. So then it's like, oh, I cut that off. And then you can kind of like go back into meditation and realize, oh, when I was a kid, I cut that off because I was trying to control um, receiving love. But then now the reparenting is love is already here. So I don't need to control anymore. I'm already whole.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
And so there's all these distortions in Spring Deep that we're cleaning up, right? I mean,
Absolutely. And I think that's a good way to think about it. You know, we have the capacity to create living hell for
oh
ourselves
yeah,
and for other people.
yeah,
Very straightforwardly. And when we're in it, and we can talk about even in it to win it, we can feel like there's no space for us. And the one thing that going into the deep and sitting in silence does is it offers an opportunity to just be present with everything that is coming up. And in that, we talk about it. We talk about it in ways because I'm aware that to people who are in the thick of it, this may sound like, oh yeah, whatever. And it takes a lot of work to get to a place of neutrality with one's experience, and so this space is for people who already have accepted the good, the bad, and the ugly about their lives. It's not for a person who is still as a main theme holding on to a sense of a victim identity where life is being done to them, because to sit in the silence requires a lot of courageousness with things that are horrible. It takes an incredible amount of courage to look at legacy issues, to look at our own egregious inhumanity that we hold within ourselves, how we've acted toward ourselves, what our family lines have participated in, what happened within our families, in our extended families. And when I say this as a tilling, Chrystal, I'm inviting all of us to think about the way that we're collectively being invited to turn up the earth and to release legacy layers of inhumanity so that we can begin again in a way that is expanded and honors the capacity for world building that is present in this moment, as so much around us is collapsing. And so there's an extreme uneasiness with the difference that we're all experiencing around what happens and what is happening and how we understand what is happening, right? And so for many of us, the process of this deep witnessing to release where there was absolute, like keeping the self at bay, and to, isn't light work. And so while I might enjoy, and while our conversation may sound like, woo, it's so great. And it is great. And man, in its ugliness, it is the most ugly, horrific, torrid story of separation that you can possibly imagine. And so one of the foundations of deep is that it's not possible for us ever to be severed from source or the earth. As long as we're embodied, as long as we're human, it's on like Kong. It's not possible, right? And I'm not going to ignore that for the story writers that may have been what happened. So more what I like to talk about is like the work that is done when we think that we're born like below a baseline of inherent wholeness and perfection with all of our imperfections, and what that does. What work that does for people to think that they're already. And so if nothing's done. And so even getting on this idea, like there's work I have to do to spiritually heal, it's like, it's not a job ever. In many ways, we reproduce, or let's say it differently, we're called to decolonize ourselves from language that would lead us to think that constantly striving is what we have to do as a part of this experience. Like you and I and everyone else who's hearing this could do nothing else. And it's already amazing.
Mm-hmm.
With all of the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So, again, what work does it do to have the sense that we need to fight to get rid of all this stuff? In many ways, it pulls us outside of the realm of our own mastery. And honestly, thank you to everybody who feels like being on the front lines of that. I honor that choice. You too are being invited to come home, rest, relinquish, reflect, release, let go, and really anchor yourself in the pure tones of your own soul song so that you can remember why you're doing what you're doing, just like all of us do. We're all being asked to remember, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gone are the days of phoning it in, because that doesn't exist. It's just like, you can't, it's an era of transparency. Like all the carpets are made out of glass. You'll be exposed in that. And if that's your trip, like I want to be exposed as a 2-time and lion. Okay. Be the best expression of that you possibly can. Like go all the way. Full saturation. Just experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Or don't. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So it is amazing. How would you describe deep to your friends?
Oops. That's me. Hey. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello. Yay. Hi.
I don't know where I went.
I don't either. Welcome back.
Like
I know. As you say, I think you said it's fabulous or it's fantastic.
Yeah. I have to take a breath. Because that was just like so much all at once. We blew some sort of there.
Right? I'll just say I've been spending a lot of time alone because there's a lot of stuff coming in. So I was like, now remember to just be paced and go at a comfortable. And I was like, so I did think about it.
Is there more you wanted to say?
Well, I think I said a lot of different things about the container. I love doing it. That's
me too.
Probably, yeah, it's a lot of, and this one was particularly unique in that it was especially hands-off in the sense of there are keepers of the container, as I call them, and they are really interesting triggers for memory that is being served and are coming online right now. That said, this idea of allowing what needs to come up to bubble up for each person in the still and hold the still within a container. A lot of space was given to that. I think there's been a bit more, I don't think, I know there's been a bit more guided visualization in the past. Um, it's been a lot. I'm not inclined to change things. I would say it's opened up a really wonderful opportunity for people to come online in whatever way feels right and turns them on. So do you feel more willing to just be okay with how you show up exactly as you are right now? But I know
Yeah,
it's a process.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, good.
I'm like I'm learning to just like the big thing is like being okay with I think we were talking about sovereignty in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming more sovereign, like becoming more confident in my path. Like and
Oh,
so many
good.
times there was so
Yeah.
much guilt around, like I gotta be a mom, I gotta be in this career, I
Hmm.
gotta do this, that, the other, and to really pull back and say, hey, I have to have a space for me.
Yay.
Because if I don't have a space for me, it's like, what's the point? I mean,
Well, there's a lot. I mean, and to be honest, what is the point? And there's a whole lot of cultural coding that says, please be invisible. You're doing invisible things. You know, the labor of the home is invisible. We learn invisibility in some of the, or perhaps the most important components of how we offer presence to each other through empathy. And, that in itself is gargantuan.
yeah, and just just even with this podcast that I've done, and I haven't even posted everyone's interviews. Like I've posted 3 years, I've posted a couple of other people. Like some people are like, it's so deep. Like our conversations, like they don't know even what some people are turned off by it, but then other people are like, whoa, like they can't even put their mind around and to really show up authentically. It's kind of like a muscle where you're, like lean into that. Like what is this really about? Like can I show up as me? And who is me when I go into the deep?
Right. I've become
What
comfortable saying I am myself. Right. I don't know.
yeah. And like Alice in Wonderland, I think when she answers that, it's by the moment it changes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or I
absolutely.
don't know the exact quote, but she
Yeah,
says something to that effect, which is just in and of itself, it's like every moment you're changing who you are with your experience. And what are you bringing into that experience? Bringing the past? Are you bringing the future? Are you bringing just what is?
absolutely. And sometimes just what is, hey, it's time to do the dishes. Being present with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there
So
anything else that you'd like to say? Or shall we wrap it up?
I think we should wrap it up. I think we went pretty deep.
I think we did
But
too.
when is the next time you will have a deep?
September. So September and January most likely will be so preparing for the harvest and then calling I'm in the northern hemisphere, the deep, deep winter. To me, the year ends when spring begins. And so those months of January, February, and March are so crucial to really sort and mulch the experiences that we had the year before it. I think without them I wouldn't feel prepared for a new cycle. So thanks for asking.
Okay. Well, I will put your information in the description box below
Thank you.
for everyone to check you out and join us. I definitely want to do it again.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Chrystal. It's a fun group of people, many of whom are repeats, and I adore being in company of such courageous people willing to just bring it in whatever way that looks like for them right now. Because we're being invited to dream big, and it's an honor to be a part.
Yeah, I love that. Like, some people you don't hear anything from, and others like me, where I'm just like, I'm gonna put my wins in here, and and everyone just gets to do their thing, and I love that.
Well, I appreciate that reflection. That's so much about the work is giving yourself permission to just as you like it and go on. We're done here. Um, and if you want to course correct, do that. But otherwise, like no tackiness to what's happened anymore. Let's just go on.
Yeah, everyone's very accepting, and I love that.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be there with you. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the intimacy of your transformation, dare I say, and transmutation of. I really appreciate the intimacy of your sharing today. It's just an honor to be able to hear how you were
Aw.
served
Well,
by our
thank you
time
for
together.
being on here.
Anytime, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you everyone
Bye.
for watching.